Welcome to episode 12 of the Alcon Maddox War Plan webinar series. I'm Richard Ritchie. Today I'm excited to be joined by Moutier Chaklil. Have I pronounced that correctly, Moutier?
Yeah.
Fantastic, once at least. Moutier is the CEO of Bespin Global MEA. They're one of the leading cloud managed service providers based here in the UAE. Bespin Global are now positioned as a leader in the 2020 Gartner Magic Quadrant. So we're pretty excited to hear about that as well. So for those of you who don't already know me, as I said, my name is Richard Ritchie. I run a niche executive search and recruitment firm based here in the UAE. And our primary focus is on sourcing senior sales and commercial leadership talent to the IT channel industry. Now, typical roles we work on are channel manager, director of channel, partnerships and alliance manager, director of sales, commercial director, VP of sales, and country manager, for example. Now, I've spent the last 25 years building and leading high-performing sales teams, and I know just how important it is to install the right commercial leader within an organization. This has a direct impact on how quickly you can penetrate the market, especially if you're going to open a new channel or a new market, but then also just how important it is when we're looking to protect revenues in times of crisis like we're in today. So if any of you on the call would like to gain insight into our talent targeting system and how we're able to identify and attract the top 15% of talent for our clients, just type the word talent in the chat box and I'll reach out to you after this session just for a quick introductory call. Okay. Now, that said, today is not about me, nor is it about recruitment. It's actually about you, and I'm actually specifically talking now to business managers in the IT channel industry. Now, over the past few months, I've spoken with many of you on the call today to get a better sense of what your top of mind challenges are in this time of COVID-19. And some of you are already part of the mastermind community, which has been set up to tackle this crisis head on. And in these top of mind challenges, really what's driven the content of this webinar series over the past 12 weeks. And this is my way of not only just giving back to the IT community, but also in a way bringing us together so that we may emerge from this crisis a lot stronger than perhaps the way some of us entered it. Over the past 11 weeks, we've actually covered topics such as the increased threat to cybersecurity as a result of working from home, fast-tracking digital transformation, managing a partner ecosystem during a crisis, and solving business problems with AI. Each week, as you know, we bring in a different industry expert to help piece together strategies to overcome these very real challenges. And this week is no different. At the end of the series, we'll be compiling all of these strategies in the form of a white paper. So if you'd like to receive a copy of this white paper, please stay to the end of the session today and I'll give you information on how you can obtain a copy. So the focus of today's session is transitioning from CAPEX to an OPEX model with cloud computing. And there's really no better person to guide us through this than Moutier Chaklil, MC, as he allows me to call him because of my lack of pronunciation. So MC, why don't you give us a little bit of an insight into who you are before we get started?
So thanks a lot, Richard. Thank you for having me in this valuable webinars. Thanks to everyone spending time with us today on this discussion. So as Richard mentioned, my name is Moutier Chaklil, aka MC. I come from an IT background. I started my career as a programmer, then as a system administrator for one of the largest telecoms, and then moved up into a pre-sales position, data center architect. And in 2015, I established my own company, focused 100% on public cloud, specifically Amazon Web Services. The company was called Falcon 9. I was inspired by the rocket, Falcon 9, SpaceX rocket. And I wanted, the motto of the company was like rocket to cloud. And, I find it very appealing. In 2019, I got someone from Bespin Global reached out to me and said, we'd love to merge into one company to to establish the Middle East market, and we believe us being Bespin Global is a South Korean company with the HQs in South Korea and big operations also in China. And they believe, the founders of Bespin Global, Hanju and Hun, believed that the best way to go into a market is to bring people from the market that understands the market, that speaks the language of the market, to run it, instead of just like taking whatever you're applying in Korea and China into the Middle East. September 2019, we established the company. We're growing, partnership with AWS, Microsoft, Google, and Alibaba, and a lot of the, let's say, top innovative companies today in the cloud industry, whether that's from a SaaS perspective, PaaS, or an IaaS, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. And today we wanted to discuss that shifting into a cloud computing, let's say, way of consuming technology not only brings challenges to the IT team, or maybe to the product management team, or to people delivering, it has effect all over the organization. So we agreed to focus specifically on how finance and procurement today, how it used to be, how they used to procure technology and IT, and how this is shifting, and what is, let's say, the main challenges we see most of them facing when transitioning. So,
it's interesting you say, MC, sorry, just to jump in, it's interesting you say, obviously, Bespin have, obviously, you know, and they partnered with you as let's say, a local partner, or bought you out rather, based on your, you know, your local knowledge and expertise of the market you already operate in. Because it's quite interesting, because on the surface of it, if you just look at the two kind of models, if you like, payment models, so CAPEX and OPEX, you would assume that given a time of crisis like we're in now, where everyone is very cost sensitive, you know, everyone's looking for a more efficient way of paying their bills, but also a way of reducing costs, if at all possible, in order to sustain businesses, right? So I believe the OPEX model is gaining perhaps a bit more momentum. It was always a conversation before COVID-19, but I think more and more people are now beginning to talk about it. Now, just because people are talking about it, just because people are making that transition, doesn't necessarily mean that this transition is a given, right? Yes. There are still challenges to overcome, perhaps challenges in the mindset of the people that have to make these decisions, right? So, you know, in the conversations we've had over the last few weeks, you know, we've discussed a few of these, whether it be, you know, the tangibility of what's being paid for, the preference for a predictable and consistent pricing model, the time to transition as well, I think is quite an important one. So I think today we'll obviously cover all of these points and more, but the intention really is to not only recognize these challenges, let's say, in the mind of the buyer or the company's transitioning, and obviously of the managed service providers who are looking to pave way for their clients' transition, but also to put together strategies of how you help your clients overcome these, and how you're able to, let's say, you know, continue the success of your existing organization. So can you just give us just a bit of an outline on those challenges? And, you know, how real are those challenges to you? And then we'll get into the strategies.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess the best way to start it is, let's look how things were done before and how things are moving in today. So even from a development perspective, we used to use the waterfall methodology. You scope a project, you spend 1-2 years scoping that, and then you go deliver. By the time you deliver, it's outdated because the market has changed. A similar thing is happening also with finance and procurement, especially when we discuss our big customers, enterprise customers, government, semi-government. They use the old way of procuring IT is you'll be having a budget, a yearly budget, let's say $1 million that you need to spend on IT. You send that requirement to procurement. It's a very clear requirement. I need this number of CPUs, this number of RAM, this number of storage. I need this amount for networking, whatsoever. Procurement will go tender, and then you procure whatever is suitable, and then you go into the ship, install, cable, power on, configure all of that stuff.
There's a definite exchange of product for money, right? It's very
Yes,
easy for people to visualize, just like purchasing houses. People get something for, they see immediately the implied value at least.
Absolutely, 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 and it's very straightforward. This is how things were done. But today, with the agility, with the COVID-19, all of those challenges, even the amount of innovation and the amount of change that you need to keep pace on, this is where cloud computing really comes into place. It's agile, it's very quick. What took us building a data center previously might take you something between 6 months to 1 year. Today, you can spin up a whole new infrastructure in less than 30 minutes, and this gives us this flexibility of being able to go to market far more quicker. But we go back into the challenge that finance and procurement teams are facing. For finance, you're moving them now from a CAPEX. I'm paying $1 million. I know exactly what I'm buying. I'll depreciate those assets for, like, let's say 3 to 5 years. Then on the 5th year, maybe I'll do a technology refresh, into more of an OPEX. It's an estimation. It goes up and down. And maybe in my early stages of development, I'm consuming, let's say, $300, $400, and then I go into production and people are using my website, and immediately my bill is going up. And for a lot of people, they see that as a challenge. How can I control that? So what makes a $10,000 bill justifiable? Why should I pay that money? I don't like that. Just give me a set number of dollars that I need to pay. And this comes first of all because it's intangible. It's elastic. With cloud computing, you can grow even within an hour. So a mobile app, no one's playing that mobile app because everyone's at work, might need a smaller infrastructure compared to the same mobile app, but after working hours, people are playing, they're online, and so on. So the first, I think, challenge is it's intangible. You cannot see it, and also it's variable. So it's an OPEX. So it moves maybe from having your own power generator into just consuming electricity from Dubai. You turn on the light, you're paying money. You turn off that light, you stop paying. So what makes my payment, how can I make sure that my investment or my payments matches what my business should be getting?
Just to kind of throw something in there, Muti. Actually, before I do that, Hans has just had a question, but I think we've actually clarified that already. Hans, just let me know if you're satisfied. But his question was, when you state OPEX, is it the true model based on monthly payment, or is it the upfront annual payment, which is presented as an OPEX model? And I think OPEX we're talking about, that's the monthly payment, right? That's the subscription payment, correct?
And even so, I might get the question. So most of the cloud providers, they'll give you an option to reserve 1 year or 3 years. But even with the reservation, a lot of the other costs are still variable. So storage is still variable. Network, if I have 1 million people coming into my website viewing images, I am paying for that traffic out of the cloud. Even if they don't buy, I need to pay that. And so even if you have, let's say, that 1 year commitment, you're still subject to an OPEX cost.
Got it. Hans, just let us know if that's answered your question, please. Yeah, okay, yes, based on usage. Okay, so just to kind of throw something into what you were just articulating as the key challenges as well, MC, is that regarding, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we're now selling our solution to different people within the organization, right? I think historically we've been selling such solutions to, let's say, the CIOs within organizations, which required one type of sale, let's say. But now, because what we're selling is actually, forget the solution is just the kind of the how, the technology that we're using to get to achieve a business objective, right? Now now our conversations are inherently more business or commercially driven, which means you may actually need a different type of salesperson, but then also you're pitching to a different person. So perhaps the CEOs are being brought into a conversation when in fact historically it mainly perhaps just procurement. So is procurement now outdated when it comes to these kind of discussions? I would imagine that in itself would possibly create some degree of resistance within organizations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love the point that you mentioned, because today everyone is consuming technology. Like marketing teams are consuming technology, customer support team are consuming technology. And what happens typically, this is we saw that in several companies. That would be a small initiative, maybe someone that has a credit card or has the approval, you know, to spend the cost, and then he goes and swipe and gets, let's say, the next customer support tool. And it's a very nice tool. But then it starts getting traction, you know, and then we need to up our speed. And this is where procurement and finance needs to come in, because that amount today is becoming a huge amount, and that technology is becoming a main pillar in how we're delivering to our customers. Take, for example, WhatsApp for Business. Today, that's a very important channel to interact with your customers, especially if you're in the delivery or, you know, in the B2C market. And WhatsApp for Business, if you're having 50, 60 people you know, answering that channel, how can I do that further than the physical limitation of a one device? Here is where I need the tool. I need to ensure all of my requests are answered and so on. And it's all variable. I'm bringing more people, I'll pay more users, then I'll go, maybe I need more analytics, and that's another subscription. And then maybe I need some integrations. And you know, it all builds up, even though it's small chunks of subscriptions, the whole solution will become a big one where procurement and finance need to step in to justify that cost.
So I think we understand the key, let's say, challenges in getting such a decision to transform, if I can use that word, over the line. So let's now jump into the strategies, because there are three kind of key strategies, if you like, we're going to discuss today. One is the educating of clients. Two would be the need to have a man on the inside, if you like, or a steering committee that can work in our favor, and then also the evolution of finance. Robert has a question. Robert, I've seen your question there regarding budgeting. We'll come back to that question a little later, because I think in the third strategy we'll address that. So we'll come back to you, okay, Robert? But MC, if we could now talk perhaps about the first strategy, so educating the client on how to understand the measures. Can you just explain what you mean by that?
Yes, absolutely. So what is nice about the cloud is you can have an hourly view, and a view that is refreshed every hour on where your spending is. So compared to CAPEX, if I invested in a data center and I no longer need that data center, I'll need to incur a big loss in my financial books, because I maybe need to sell it, I need to turn it off, I'm paying cooling, X, Y, and Z. But even though the cloud presents that challenge, it also gives you the power to control that cost, you know. So finance team, or let's say today, this new movement, it's called FinOps. Finance team needs to understand that that cost is variable and they can control it. And they need to build measures or KPIs around that. So for example, if I'm running an e-commerce website that is serving 2 million people, how much money I'm willing to pay on that? And then the budget becomes related to a metric, not just a number that I sign on the first of the year and then I consume it. And here's where finance can come in and start understanding those metrics. So let's say, for example, they can see metrics: how many people are coming to my e-commerce website, how many orders do I have, how much interactions I'm doing, and then they can come up with, let's say, an acceptable spending you know, level or threshold. You know, I'm willing to pay on this solution X, Y, and Z. I have an HRMS system, an HR system. Okay, I have 100 employees. I shouldn't be spending X amount of money. So those metrics can be built, and on top of that, understand my spending. A smaller example is today emails, whether that's M365, G Suite, or any of that. It's a straightforward calculation. How many active employees multiplied by the number of subscriptions? That's it. And I can monitor that metric every month and understand where my spending is. When we bring all of that together, here finance become more of a dynamic enabler of spending. Also today, this is where they can step in and start also contributing into, as mentioned before, should I go to a reserved instance? This is an ERP system that will stay here in my organization for 3 years. Why do I need the pay-as-you-go module? I'll go into the reserved module. This is where finance need and procurement need to come into the play, understand why I'm paying X, and based on that, limit the threshold and take actions accordingly.
I guess it's like you say. So the key thing here is part of, I guess, the sales pitch is transitioning from a this is what we use. So this is perhaps how we can review our cost structure, and that actually feeds nicely into actually the question that Robert posed. The question Robert posed was, how do you foresee the annual budgeting processes in companies changing based on the much more uncertain monthly costs that are based on consumption?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you how we do it in our organization. For example, we have profiles for our employees, and I go and say, the technical team, they need these tools, they need these subscriptions, X, Y, and Z. Sales team, they need these, and then I'll just, based on those metrics, multiply, and I know my yearly budget. Because every employee joining my company, based on his profile, I know exactly what my spending should be. Let's say from an initiative. So I'll say, for example, I'm going to invest, let's say, $5,000 into maybe 4 new channels: an e-commerce, a mobile app, a WhatsApp channel, and a social media. And based on those metrics, I can measure my ROI and adjust. Maybe my business does not fit a lot of mobile app, but it's more of a WhatsApp, and then I tune, just like move that spending from one place to another, which is possible because of cloud.
The thing is, I think the question, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong here, is so clearly, MC, you understand how to, your budget is driven by this methodology anyway, because this is what you advocate, right? This is what you're encouraging businesses to do. But I think what Robert's alluding to is many of the companies that are perhaps looking to transition, because you've never really transitioned, right? Your business has always been this, because this is what you do. But other companies are requiring them. Exactly. But other companies, we're requiring them to transition, and transitioning from one payment model to the other requires this education. So I guess the real point is, how do you what challenges do you foresee with that specifically? So in this kind of like you say, this drive to educate, let's say, the finance and procurement teams of the companies we're now interacting with, are there challenges that you keep coming up against, and how are you perhaps getting over them? I think that would be pretty valuable to the listeners as well.
It is a great question, and brings us into strategy number 2. So just to summarize, strategy number 1: understand the metrics. Just tolerate your spending with what benefits you're getting. And here comes strategy number 2, and that is having a champion, or let's say a cloud center of excellence within your organization that builds this change, or this new methodology of approaching stuff. So instead of trying to change the whole organization, we take one, let's say, quick win. We bring maybe a champion or a team of champions. So let's say, for example, someone from finance that knows how to talk to, understand the finance language, procurement, technology, business, maybe marketing. Okay, we bring those. We say we want to transition into this. We take a quick win. We do it, and based on the learning, those people will become your champion within the department that goes and says, this is how new stuff is. This is our, let's say, prototype or quick win that we did. This is the lessons I learned, and this is what we need to change. And and then they become like your gurus or go-to point in how do I transform into that. And there's a lot of,
yeah, they're like the internal ambassadors for change in this respect, because without having this, like say, the steering committee, as we used to call it, internally, it's very hard to get such, because what can be a very conceptually at least a very large transition, even though you may be able to achieve it in 30 minutes, the actual mindset of the shift is quite significant, especially if people see it upsetting the existing operating rhythms of their function, right?
Absolutely, and especially if they speak the same language. Cloud computing, it's full of technologies and acronyms and so on. From a finance perspective, it's maybe he can summarize everything in let's say, less than an hour. People, it's just how do we treat, let's say, X, Y, and Z, we'll treat this, we'll do X, Y, and Z, and so on. So he understands the language and understands what exactly needs to be done within that department. Number three is, strategy number three is transitioning more from a yearly budget using the current tools into other tools that give you visualization into your spending on an hourly, daily basis. And just to stress here on the importance of the tool, today you have let's say one cloud account and maybe one email account and so on. But think about big enterprises where they have several companies, several departments, several teams, all shifting into this OPEX module. So yes, maybe my team is compliant with my OPEX and the other team is, but if I need that holistic view from an organizational perspective, how my spending is happening, what is my forecast for the upcoming, let's say, 30 days. And here's where if the audience love, you can go into FinOps.org. That's an organization today that is championing the movement into how finance should evolve. And also we, Investment Global, based on the experience we had in Korea and in China and today in the Middle East, have developed our own tool called Ops Now. It helps enterprises understand what they're spending on which assets or let's say projects or services, and also recommendation on how to reduce that cost or optimize it and control it. And there's a ton of solutions, lots of quick wins that companies just like Bestbank can help customers in optimizing their costs. Frankly speaking, I think we have a big chunk of our customers. The engagement starts immediately in, I need you to optimize my costs. I have my X, Y, and Z workload in the cloud, and I'm paying X amount of money, which I need to control. And this is, where we go in, understand their architecture, their spending, and then optimize it for them.
So with that, then I guess and Robert, just clarify if we've answered your question. But based on what you just said, MC, it sounds very much like, and I guess this is perhaps because of the situation we're in now with COVID, a lot of these conversations or requirements, let's say, are coming to you born out of, or at least driven by costs, right? They're not being driven by, we want to be more efficient, we want to move, we want to be forward thinking, they're driven by cost. And I guess if they're being driven by cost, then the educating of the evolution of, if you say the finance divisions from an AR, AP to FinOps becomes a lot easier because their ears are open. So although, yes, you might foresee there being some challenges from a budgeting point of view, they're open to doing that because that's ultimately how they're going to accommodate such a change, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Are there
especially with the remote work, more and more people are now using the cloud, using all of those solutions, because we can no longer be at our offices. It becomes more and more convenient for those customers to move immediately into the cloud. We had some customers that during the pandemic, because of the lockdown, they couldn't even reach their data centers. It was very hard. Certain spare parts, certain stuff they couldn't get because of all of the challenges that happen. And you forget all about that once you go into the cloud.
I guess this transition is natural to some extent as businesses evolve. Would you ever? This is probably a naive question to some extent, but would you ever, or have you ever seen someone take a backward step? So they moved to the OPEX model, but then decided actually no, from our point of view, CAPEX is better. Maybe from a profit reporting point of view, or I'm not sure. But have you ever seen anyone go the other way or regress?
Okay, so here I'm going to be salesy. Sorry for this. Yeah, we saw several customers, but I guess because they don't understand how the cloud operates. So they went into the cloud, spin up some instances, and boom, 60K, 70K bill, and they say, stop, we cannot control this. You can control this. You just need the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, this is where we as partners come in, help you set up stuff, architect stuff, manage that. So again, MSP, we manage that. We ensure 5 things are always there. Security, day 0. Security is always number 1. Cost optimization, reliability, performance, and operational excellence. These are always there for us. And it becomes, my core business is, let's say, I'm an automotive dealer. I am a retailer. Okay, why should I build a team and educate and spend? Again, that's back to the CAPEX. Spend a ton of money to enable my team, keep them up to date with technology, all of that stuff, hiring and so on, while I can rely on an external team that specializes only in managing that. And this is, I think, not only in technology. Everyone today, we're moving into this service-oriented economy. My core is technology. I wouldn't hire, let's say, maybe a recruitment team. I'll just rely on a company that is number 1 in recruiting candidates for me.
Makes sense. Hans has another question. So does regulation limit cloud migrations?
Absolutely, 100%. So regulations, data privacy, and so on. This is all bringing, this is all delaying cloud migration. But today, for example, you've got Alibaba and Azure, both in the UAE. You've got AWS in Bahrain. And I think if we this is again part of a lot of discussions, is what really needs to be within country vs what you can just host outside. And if you think today in all of our meetings at home and so on, your mobile phone is there, your data is there, and it goes back now what really needs to stay within the country. I love this case study that was published before. HSBC, they had this issue of people coming into their mobile app, web application, and so on. That's a massive load from the public, but yet the data needs to stay within the bank itself. So what they did is they built the whole front end, which is what we call stateless, or it doesn't have any data within it, all on the cloud. Elastic, it grows, it serves multiple channels. But when the final transaction needs to be done, it goes back into the data center, processed, and then back. And this is where, discussions of a hybrid cloud, I have certain stuff within my, let's say, on-prem private data center vs some workloads that's just purely on the cloud.
That's quite an interesting example, actually, because from a user or consumer perspective, it's seamless, right? You have no idea where this information is being hosted or where your data is being sent. You obviously trust that it's being secure, but as long as there's limited, let's say limited, what's the word? Just intrusion or just limited frustration experienced by a user, it really doesn't matter. But like I say, it's interesting about the different regulations. I think that HSBC model is a super interesting one, because for me, initially, it seems like if I'm operating in a few different countries, do I need to access different data centers? Do I need different platforms? It can be, like I said, and I guess this is part of the education point, right?
Yes.
The perception is confusion, or the reality is confusion, if you like, because we don't know. But then I guess part of your the lead time in any sales process from a company that works in your field is very much along the lines of education, because I guess once you tick all those education boxes, it almost becomes the standard decision, right? It's like, okay, well, obviously, but as long as I can, like, say, manage my costs, I've got there's an understanding that there's going to be variable costs, but then as if are you able to set let's say thresholds of tolerance? So let's say if you know, in your example, one client you're aware of had a monthly expense of 60,000, which it seems like it shocked them back to CAPEX. Is there a way, I guess, using the measures that you've mentioned of keeping that within tolerance?
Absolutely. So it all starts with the architecture, you know, and this is where you don't just jump into executing. It's similar to how you build a building. You know, you need to understand what you're doing. It's just like, not like I just spin stuff up and so on. Once the architecture is there, you'll have an estimation. Again, estimations, you'll be having, let's say, a fluctuation of 10, 20%, which you can also put within the budget. So I say, let's say, for example, Richard wants to have his new website. It should cost him around, let's say, $1,000 for the first 10,000 users. Then it grows X, Y, and Z. I need to up the spending. And we can put limits, budgets, alarms around that. What is nice is, let's say you're now in, let's say we have this even as a real life scenario. One of our customers were developing a very innovative platform, fintech platform, and due to COVID, they needed to stop. So we just immediately minimized that bill from, let's say, a 5-digit invoice into a 3-digit invoice, because we turned off everything, just kept the storage, kept all of the machines powered off. The moment it's comfortable to come back to that project, we're up and running in less than an hour. So, so this is how you. This is the beauty of how you can control that.
Yeah. So, a question from Firas. Hans has actually just said he can't hear us. Is everybody else, the sound still okay? Can someone just type in just yes in the chat box just to make sure we haven't lost everyone? Or if no one types yes, then clearly we have lost everyone. It's good now. Okay, thanks, Hans. Okay, so Firas had a question, MC. So how does Bespin drive the ROI discussion when it comes to switching models?
So we first need to understand the requirements. What are you trying to achieve out of that? Is it just a static website? Is it an e-commerce? How will that ROI be obvious for the company? You know, and then we take it on from there. Understand their requirements. Start even introducing new ways of how do you consume technology. So instead of, let's say, using virtual machines, we go to Docker if they have the capability to change again. You know, there is a lot of metrics around that. Using certain tools, using certain SaaS, till we understand exactly what their aim is and how much they should be billing for a certain, let's say, workload or usage. And then we build the business case from there, and we take it on.
So how quickly do you, just as an extension to the ROI question, how quick do you see companies judging that the transition has been a success? Obviously, I guess that depends on how that company defines success. But from a return on investment point of view, would you say a company sees is able to satisfy themselves that yes, this has been a good transition within a 3, 6, 9, 12-month period, or is it longer than that?
So sometimes you see the ROI like immediate. I'm running a data center, I'm spending X, Y, and Z. I move tomorrow to the cloud. I stop the spending on the data center, and I am getting a cheaper invoice to run my technology. Just for example, today there is a lot of companies there that is running their own. Let's say I'm just putting very simple examples. I have my Active Directory, file share, and an email. I go to M365. I no longer need that whole virtual machine server. I'm just paying per user. And my file server is today on M365. My email is on M365. I don't need a firewall or let's say a spam filter, X, Y, and Z. So you're not just decreasing the amount you're paying for cooling X, Y, and Z. It's also the overhead. Now I'm able to get my messages on my mobile. All of that stuff. I'm shifting the whole organization into a new way. So the ROI can be very direct, very specific, and sometimes it's just very obvious on the whole organization.
Yeah, but I guess there's no. I guess you got to be very careful about promising the impact of a return on investment metric, because it, like I say, it depends on just how a company is measuring that already. But you would anticipate the majority of companies certainly that transition over, lacking, of course, apart from the ones that perhaps are missing this education part about the cost fluctuations. But the reality is it is, on the whole, a more cost-effective and cost-efficient model, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. And then, so I guess, and I guess that's one of the reasons why certainly the field that you operate in now during this pandemic, you're one of the, let's say, more, call it defensive stocks, if I can use that terminology. You're one of the companies or areas of the market that are doing well from this current situation, because it's shining a light on a way that companies can not only be more efficient but also save money at the same time. So it kind of feeds into that kind of digital transformation. But are there any kind of obviously we've discussed the education, the need to have a man on the inside, and then the evolution of the finance division. But are there any things that companies need to have in place before they embark upon such a transition? So let me just clarify what I mean. So when we talk about digital transformation, the first step usually in digital transformation is understanding, okay, doing a proper audit on what our existing processes are, because I can't transform anything to the digital form unless I understand, are they the right processes that are in place anyway, or do they need to change before they're modified? So are there any prerequisites that you've come across where you say, well, actually, either we can't transition you to the cloud now, or you need to have X, Y, Z in place beforehand, but we'll obviously help you do that?
So let me answer this in two answers.
Sure.
Barriers for moving to the cloud, I guess it's like almost invisible. The amount of technology, the amount of innovation, the amount of tools available today to move to the cloud is unbelievable. And but the other answer will be, I look more into digital innovation, and please excuse my funny way of doing this. Digital innovation is just like summer holiday. Everyone wants to go on a summer holiday, but your summer holiday might be climbing a mountain. My summer holiday, relaxing on a beach. The other guy, his summer holiday is, going to meet his parents and X, Y, Z. So it's an umbrella, but what needs to be done is the willing. There is tons of technology today that you can consume in seconds and bring your company into a digital innovation. But you need to have the will, first of all. Second of all, as we mentioned, you need a champion inside that goes, you need to rethink stuff. How am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And it needs to come, from top, and the whole organization to embrace it, because sometimes introducing, I'll be very frank, sometimes introducing technology within an organization might bring people's job security on the line. And this is where you start seeing people fighting back for that, no, that wouldn't work, no, that wouldn't happen. You'll need, to start twisting stuff around us.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That comes back into the understanding of exactly what that transition means, right? Because unless there's that level of understanding, people do make false assumptions. And like I say, if that assumption is anything to do with job security, then that can be quite not only destabilizing for an organization, but then also that can prevent the necessary adoption of a new model or solution that's being employed, right? I've seen it time and time again in companies that I've worked for, specifically within the sales function. The most obvious thing to implement from sales is a CRM, and more often than not, the CRM is always the best option to both enable, empower, and really drive efficiency from a sales organization. But the amount of resistance you get from an adoption point of view is sometimes just unbelievable. But because the education part, there hasn't been enough time spent on the education part to enable that adoption, because for a fact that once it's adopted in its fullest sense, the sales organization will be more effective, and the company will be better because they'll be able to generate more revenue and protect more of the revenue that they've worked so hard to bring on board in the first place. So that's really interesting.
And what is nice today, so I think back 10 years, a CRM project would take you 1 year. I'm talking from a technology, from an IT perspective, might take 1 year to deploy, install, ensure all of the tables are, very well organized, and we have our processes and so on. But today, with innovative solutions, just like Salesforce, HubSpot, and so on, it takes you a matter of a week or two, to get the whole solution up and running. And if you don't like it, just cancel your subscription, move into another one. So we used to have this terminology before, vendor lock-in. Today this is becoming more and more thin. With the integrations, with the ability to extract data, move data around, you become more agile and nimble in choosing that.
So Carsten has made quite an interesting point. I think Carsten works in this industry also. The data center head will always fight cloud adoption.
Yes.
Is there anything to comment on that other than yes? I think you're probably right.
Yes, but today again, I guess we will go back to data centers, but in a totally different way. How that will happen? So when we look into solutions like Anthos, Kubernetes, I can transform my digital, let's say, my data center into a cloud, let's say, agile way. But at the end of the spectrum, I don't think the old data center of me doing network switching, servers, and so on will still exist. Especially with 5G, it will move more into edge computing. What do I mean by edge computing? Think of edge computing something like just to make it easy, like your fridge. Like, I don't know who manufactured the fan of my fridge or the door or whatsoever. I bring this one box, I plug it into the electricity, and I have a fridge. Edge computing will be similar to this, especially when we talk about IoT, robotics, manufacturing. If my robot needs to take decisions immediately, and I have a latency of 400 milliseconds to reach that cloud, let's say, data center, then my whole manufacturing is delayed. So this is where edge computing comes in. Big vendors will start shipping, let's say, ready-made black boxes that you just put there. If they get defected, the vendor by himself will fix that for you, and all you need is consume that technology to become better and better. So we'll always have that, mix and match. Yeah.
Excellent. One final point from Michael. So Michael said the reluctancy, so this is talking about the transition again. So the reluctancy is first step of the transition process. It's all about how to manage effectively the change management. think Michael's background is actually in operations and change management, so I can see exactly what he's picked up on. So nothing more to add to that, I don't think, Michael. Look, so I think just to kind of sum up the discussion points here, the strategy. So as I said at the top of the call, what we're really highlighting is the challenge of transitioning companies from the CAPEX to OPEX regular payment model. There's all the kind of key challenges, if you like, that we come across when managing this transition are that of mindset predominantly, but they're born out of the fact that we're no longer have a tangible product to both purchase and sell. There's also the preference for predictable and consistent costs, which is sometimes a barrier to people transitioning. Sometimes you get the resistance at the CIO level, like Carsten was alluding a moment ago with the head of data center. Time to transition can also be a perception issue, but again, so the way we kind of counter and overcome these with the different strategies. So obviously educating the clients in the first instance, so they understand the ramifications of the decision, but also how quickly this decision or transition can be processed. They need to have a man on the inside, so be that one advocate, be that a steering committee or a center of excellence is important from a cloud MSP provider point of view to help our clients transition, but also from a client's point of view to make sure they have internal stakeholders that are managing this, not only the transition but also the ongoing let's say maintenance and management of the new operating model as well. And then the third strategy was really to, I guess, to work more closely with the finance division and ensuring they understand the need, if you like, certainly for this type of model, is we're moving away from the procurement of the AR, the AP towards FinOps. You mentioned actually there was a website that was discussing more about this. Is it finops.org? Is that what you said, MC?
Yes, absolutely. Finops.org, and also it's for the tool, it's opsnow.com.
Yeah.
It's a tool internally developed by Western Global.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, look, that's all we've got time for this week. MC, thank you very much for your time. Thoroughly enjoyed having you on the call. So, guys, look, if you'd like to get a copy of the white paper that I mentioned at the beginning of the call, please just type in white paper into the chat box. And once that's prepared, that should be in the next couple of weeks. We'll arrange to get a copy sent across to you. Also, if you'd like to arrange an informal chat about becoming part of our mastermind community, again, just type the word mastermind into the chat box. And then either myself or one of my team will reach out to you in the coming days to, again, arrange an informal chat. So that's it for us today. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So that's it. MC, thank you.